Okay guys, here we go. Let's have a look at the drums of Oblivion, which was BBC Song of the Week just recently. So I guess it's approved, it's radio ready because it was on the radio. It's just a little bit of bragging here. So let's have a look at what we did. Like I showed you earlier, this is what the original sound, the original preset was from Hertz drums, which is already amazing. So it's super deep, it's very well tuned, the cymbals are crisp, the snare is huge and very deep as well, and the kick is exceptionally tight. I really love this super duper tight kit, but added to that tightness is also a lot of low end, a really good and punchy sub, which is what we need, especially if you want that bring me the horizon, falling in reverse kind of feeling. So the times where we have to compromise between low end in the bass guitar and the bass drum are kind of over, I would say. We have enough processing power and ways of mixing to be able to make both really, really big. So now let's have a listen to the kit as a whole as I mixed it. Okay, so as you can hear instantly, I made it a bit crisper, a bit tighter, a bit punchier, just a bit more energetic and a bit more upfront, I would say. The snare is quite different, as Vic pointed it out earlier. It sounds more like a gunshot every time, and that's mostly down to the parallel processing, which I will reveal in a moment to you. So before we do that, however, let's have a look without parallel processing at all on the kit. So I'm gonna turn all of these off. Okay, so as you can hear, the parallel processing really gives, every layer gives another layer of intensity to the kit. And to me, that's really my secret sauce. Like I said earlier, I like to have 2 or sometimes even 3 or 4 parallel processing chains on the drums, and I like to automate them to find first a good balance between them and then move them around a little bit during the mix as well to change the intensity, maybe even the upfrontness or the attack of the instrument as a whole. So that's my way of mixing drums. It's not the only way to do it and not even the only way how I do it, but for more complex songs like this one, this is how I like to do it. So first, let me show you what I've done here. This is the preset like we have it. As you can see, it looks the same. Nothing has significantly changed. I think I lowered the tuning a little bit on the snare, and the rest has stayed pretty much the same. I've routed all of the outputs onto their own channel, and then by going into the mix window down here and pressing plus down here, I created auxiliaries to which then I output all of my separate instruments. So I really mixed it like it's a real kit with a separate track for every part of the kit. So first up we have the kick. So I'm gonna take off the drum bus, I'm gonna mute the parallel chains. Here we go, and now we can have a listen to the kit with only the serial processing on the channels themselves. So as you can hear, it's a bit brighter, a bit punchier. I carved out quite a lot of space for all of the immense amount of instruments that came up in the mix later on. So number 1, kick. Kick, of course, all of the direct ones go in equal amounts to my 2 parallel chains, which are the all-in and the crush. I'll show you in a moment. The kick, interesting, I couldn't remember doing this, but I actually ended up lowering treble and lowering attack on this one. This is crazy, I couldn't remember that. I took out most of the low mids at exactly 200 Hertz actually, and wow, I even lowered a little bit of the subs. This is actually quite surprising for me. The gate is not engaged, it just automatically comes up when there's nothing, but it's not acting. So let's have a listen to the kick on its own without processing. yeah, it's a bit rounder, fuller at the same time because of the reduced top end. So it's really just a bit more there. And the compression just adds a little bit more of the attack. Let's have a look at the snare on its own. So what we have done here is I've done the opposite. I added a bit of top end, reduced lows. That's incredible. I never do this. Reduced low mids. That's also incredible. I never would have thought I would do that. And then interesting. And then I added a bit of the all-in, the 1176 all-in in serial as well. So let's have a listen without. That sounds very interesting. It's not quite how I remember it, to be honest. And this shows exactly what happens when you start mixing in the context of the song. Because these are, I have to say, moves that I would never do in a mix if I just solo an instrument. Like, why would I take off lows? But for some reason, this is what apparently had to happen. And then let's add to this snare the parallel one, which is bus 13, I believe. Yes. Okay, so this is why I did it, because here I'm adding the black box with a lot of pentode and a bit of triode. This will crank it a bit already, and then I'm just smashing it completely with the distressor, taking off all of the top end, boosting a lot of low end, and clipping it so we don't get just this unnecessary transient, so we can get a really thick punch. Let's have a listen to it on its own. Yeah, okay, that's juicy. I like that. So what I did here basically is I used the direct one for the articulation, the presence, and the attack. And I use more the parallel for the body and the low end and just that huge punchy sound that we get here. The clipping, guys, here, that's deliberate. That's a trick of mine, because what happens is after a lot of compression that you will never completely be able to choke the transient unless you go 0 millisecond attack. So what happens is with more and more compression, you get a huge spike in the transient, which will make your bus compressor and your master bus go crazy. So especially on the snare drum, I like to clip it, kind of shave it off, but in a good musical way, if you can even say that in the digital age, usually using the Brit N or the Brit 4K. So I don't have this spike, and I have more RMS, more loudness, but less peak volume, right? So I have less peak here, but more volume actually. Let's have a look at the toms, what happened here. Also the toms, of course, are going to both of the parallel chains here. And this is just my tom preset, bit of 6K, very broad, bit of 7.5 with a shelf, bit less low end, again running through the SSL 4K, less low mids, you always have to do that, guys, and a little bit, interestingly, even less lows, and then just a bit of presence and a tiny bit of 2-to-1 compression, so not even that much. Let's have a listen. Without. Interesting, very dead, very dull. Okay, that's very interesting. So this 6K boost, or this 5.6, whatever, that's basically tuned to the guitars, okay? It's tuned to the pitch of the song. So if the song pitch changes a little bit, I would most likely change the frequency of this, because it has quite a broad attack. Hi-hat, nothing to go crazy about, just, I can imagine, yeah. A bit less low mids, very interesting. This peak here in the subs is interesting to me, guys, and I see this in a lot of these kind of high-end instruments. This is just rumble, and I don't know why they would keep it in a sampler instrument, so usually I would just cut this off. Because when you have a lot of these, they add up, right? 0 plus 0 in audio equals plus 6. So every time you have one of these, you just end up getting more and more rumble in your mix, and you don't know why it sounds muddy. Cymbals. Yeah, I'm basically just adding a bit of brightness, reducing the harshness, which always exists around 5-6K, and this whistling sound that almost sounds like wind over the cymbals. I really don't like that when they have that. Sounds like walking in a forest. I like forests, but I don't like walking. Overhead, I do surprisingly little here, just a little bit of EQ. I don't like to over-process these, especially if they sound good already. Let's have a look. So just harshness removal, guys, and a bit of 2K, which is where the vocal sits, of course, in the mix. And again, of course, the muddy low mids that we never need. Then the room, let's have a look here. Okay. Just a bit of low mid, there's not much to go home about. So now let's have a listen to how I treated the drums all together, because of course that's a big part of the sound. So first we go through the SSL G. It just does a little bit of smoothing, I quite like it, and the snare just becomes really punchy, really in your face when you have it. G, bass compressor, what else? But I'm not even touching the needle, so it's really just for the very loud hits, and then a black box, which adds a bit of thickness. Let's have a look. So this is a very little amount of processing, I have to say, that I did in serial. As you can see, overheads, rooms are completely unchanged, actually, unaltered. And especially the drum bus, what I don't like to do is I don't like to squash my drums on the bus. The reason for that being is that if I was to apply a lot of compression here now, it would start messing with the cymbals. And I like to keep my cymbals clean so that when they hit, they fade out beautiful, and there's not this cracky, weird, crashy sound, this squashed, white, noisy crash sound or cymbal sound, which I really don't think is good. And one way of doing that is by just not applying compression to the overheads, and succeeding that, of course, the drum bus as well. But then you ask, okay, how do we get some pump? Well, we do that in parallel, and that's where my parallel chains come in. In this one, of course, I went with the first one, the CLA Crush, which is a preset that I took from one of his webinars, a 4:1 ratio, and about 10 dB of gain reduction, and this one just set to the middle so that it goes into the middle. A bit more low end, and a bit less top end, just taking out a bit of the harshness. Let's listen to it just on its own. So this to me is just a kind of an intensity slider. So let's have a listen with and without. Yes, it becomes louder, but it also sounds like the drummer is hitting just a little bit harder on the kit. And that's exactly what I want. And I love how beautiful you can push this in and push this out of the mix without becoming overbearing, and really changing the feeling of the drums and the song therefore as well. Let's have a listen with just a bit of volume swells here. The beauty is, because we have the cymbals in the drum bus nearly unaffected, the CLA Crush doesn't mess up either the cymbals. So the cymbals remain nice, clean hits, and we don't get this really bad crushed sound. Let's have a look at the all-in. We all know what that is. 1176, all in setting. I love this one, the Monster from Slate. Not sponsored content, as always, guys. I just really happen to like this. I used this high frequency sensitivity a little bit, and I actually took out more top end and a little bit more lower mids, because with a lot of compression, problems come up, and I like to fix the problems before it, actually. More lows, always, why not? And the low cut at 30, let's have a listen. And now let's put this into the mix as well. And with this one, you can crank the kit quite a bit. Let's have a listen. So these volume moves that I did here, this is exactly what also happens in the mix between a verse and the chorus, between the chorus and the breakdown. Of course, we push it even more, and so on and so forth. The ratio between the crush and the parallel might change. It might be more like this, it might be like this in another section. So it's really lovely to change the feeling of the drums and the song with only a couple of faders. And guys, that's it, really. There's nothing else to it. I absolutely love how the Hertz drums performed in this album, and I can't wait to mix the next one. Vic is already working on it, and I hope Hertz drums will give him a copy of the software so he can create the drums himself, and then we can create something truly amazing, because these presets, guys, they are absolutely fantastic. I absolutely love the Fame and Fury pack for this kind of music, the Metal Unlimited if you want to start more from scratch, be a bit more raw. It's fantastic. And the reworked blue, red and white packs, they sound exquisite. Very, very good drums, guys. Very happy with it. So this is it for today's video, guys. If you want to learn more, visit my website. We can do masterclasses, one-on-one sessions, and of course, if you want any mixing, mastering done, just hit me up. I will see you in the next video, and until then, happy mixing. Bye-bye.